Hi, Ted. Hi, Hona. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yep, I can hear you both.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very great discussion planned for you all. Just give us a few minutes. We're just going to wait for more people to join, and shortly we'll start some music. In the meantime, if we could ask everyone to please circulate the link and share with your friends so that everyone is aware that the space is happening. However, it will be recorded and it will be made available after.
Hello, everyone. I guess Robert, for some reason, is in the not any longer on the stage, so I'm getting him up. In the meantime, yeah, we'll be playing music shortly. Just be patient with us. It has been some time since we hold these spaces, but it's great to be back. Robert, you're back, so I guess you can probably play the music.
Okay, let me see if I can play it. Hi, everyone. Hi, Ted. Hi, Hona. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, apologies. I just had some connection issues. I think hopefully it'll be resolved now. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this great Twitter Spaces session. We have a very relevant and important discussion to have with you all today. Please continue to share the link to this Twitter space with your friends and let them know that this is happening. If you cannot attend the full session, this will be recorded and it will be made available later. So we're going to start with just some introductions. So starting with Tedros and then Hona and then myself. Go ahead, Ted.
Thank you, Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this AAA Twitter space. My name is Teodros Terfe, and I am the chairman of the Amhara Association of America. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hona Mandafo. I'm a AAA's advocacy director. I'm glad to reconnect via Twitter. It has been, as I said earlier, it has been some time since AAA held a Twitter space discussion, but looking forward to continuing the tradition moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Hona. And greetings, everyone. My name is Robel, and I'm Communications Director for AAA. I'm excited to be a part of this space with you all today, and we're going to get straight into it. So first, I would like to give an opportunity to really go into the title of this space, Abiy's Genocidal War on Amhara, Developments and Implications for the Horn of Africa. So Ted, could you maybe discuss with the audience why we chose to have this title?
Yeah. So there's first I kind of want to explain in terms of where we are holding this Twitter space right now. As Hone said earlier, as an organization, we don't really hold Twitter space discussions very often. We know that the Amhara community uses Twitter space as a way to communicate, to educate the broader international community about the Amhara people, what is happening to Amhara people in a way and it allows us to connect other people, to advocate collectively together, and we really are happy and glad to see the growth of the not only of the Twitter space but just the use of social media, to advocate for Amhara people. The Twitter space is not generally what AAA uses to engage our supporters. We do use Twitter, but we, from time to time, when we think it's critically important to have a space discussion, we will do that. And the reason for us wanting to hold this Twitter space discussion is because there is really, important and concerning developments that have been happening within Amhara region that is not given enough attention. And it's not because for the lack of trying by, AAA, other Amhara organizations such as FANA, IAM, or the broader Amhara community. There has been significant effort to bring attention. However, the international community has largely ignored what is currently happening and the crisis that's happening within the Amhara region. And so this is an attempt to bring attention, another way to bring attention to that. In terms of the title, Abiy's Genocidal War on Amhara, developments and implications for the Horn of Africa, and why did we use this title for this Twitter space? As a people, Amhara people believe, and it is actually factual, that there has been a war waged against the Amhara people for quite some time. It is not anything new. When the TPLF established themselves as an armed group, they labeled the Amhara people as their eternal enemy. And at that time, the Amhara people did not take this very seriously and never thought that this actually would come into fruition. But even other armed groups such as the Oromo Liberation Front and their armed wing, the Oromo Liberation Army, when they organized themselves, they also viewed the Amhara people in the same fashion as the TPLF. The Amhara people, has always been used as a scapegoat for Ethiopia's problems. So since TPLF, took power in 1990s, the early 1990s, what the Amhara people witnessed was their historical lands from every corner being taken away and forcefully being annexed into other regions. For example, in the case of Walqait, Talant, and Raya being annexed into the Tigray region, many parts of Shua being annexed into, and some parts of Wollo into the Oromia region, the Metekel being forcefully annexed into the newly created Benshangul Gumuz region, and the Oromia region was a newly created region. What transpired after that is the marginalization of the Amhara people because they became minoritized in these regions. And within the Amhara region itself, the people were subjected by, a group of Amharas that were really inserted to subjugate and oppress the Amhara people to the benefit of the TPLF. There have been massacres that happen over time, political repression, torture, arrest, ethnic cleansing. It has been going on for a very long time. The world was unaware of this. Amharas did not organize to respond to this crisis. It was something that the organization and the awakeness, the consciousness came at a later time, even though there were efforts by a few. So this war on Amharas has been going on for quite some time. When Abiy came into power, the hope from majority of Amharas was that this war would end. And this war is not just by killing. There's misrepresentation of history, misrepresentation of narratives, and really scapegoating Amharas for all of Ethiopia's problems. So there was high hopes for that Abiy would correct a lot of these issues, remove this get rid of this ethnic apartheid system, imagining a new way of organizing, political organization within Ethiopia. But that did not happen. In fact, it was very quickly that we learned that Abiy did not have a different his ideology was no different than the TPLF, and not just his ideology and how Ethiopia should be organized, but even his perception and view of the Amhara people. It was no different. The situation for Amharas got worse. The war on Amharas, the scale of it even increased and got worse. We saw the ethnic cleansing and the genocide that has been happening in Walega against the Amhara people. And initially, there was the thought that this was just being perpetrated by the Oromo Liberation Army. But after investigation, it was revealed that a lot of this ethnic cleansing, majority of it was actually by the Oromia Regional Special Forces. It is this force that actually has the capacity to ethnically cleanse over 1 million Amharas from that area. So it was a joint effort between the Oromo Liberation Army and the Oromia Regional Special Forces with the support and knowledge of the federal forces, essentially Abiy Ahmed. And then also we saw with the war, when in northern Ethiopia, what the largest affected community being the Amhara people. The Amhara region is nearly 30 million people. And of course, there are Amharas nearly 20 million Amharas who live outside of this so-called Amhara region. So the war against Amharas, meaning every part, their personhood, economic warfare against Amharas, cultural warfare, historical warfare, has been going on for a very, very long time. And that's why Amharas, have been saying there is a war on the Amhara people. And so that's why we chose this title. And it's really indicative. So if there are non-Ethiopians who are here, it's important for them to have an understanding why we Amharas believe that there is a war against the Amhara people, and that's why we chose this title. I can go into more detail, but I think this explanation suffices. Now I'll turn it over to HoA to kind of provide context of what has been happening in Ethiopia. Since really the signing of the so-called cessation of hostilities agreement between the TPLF and the Abiy-led Oromo Prosperity Party, and then we'll go into some more details. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. As Ted has said, I think the cessation of hostilities agreement in Pretoria and the follow-up agreement in Nairobi are often taken, particularly by non-Ethiopians, as a turning point in Ethiopia's effort to regain peace, if there was peace ever in that country for the last 3 decades. But the reality is, nothing has changed as a result of that negotiation process between TPLF and OPP. The reality is Ethiopia is still, in chaos and mess, and the region continues to wage war against Amharas and other people as well. So the negotiation process, although misconstrued as an effort to regain peace in Ethiopia, in reality, it kind of brought into a new form of alliance to continue the war. And this is something that we've been saying from the very beginning. We said the negotiation process is not inclusive enough. It cannot bring lasting peace since it has excluded Amharas, the largest affected community in the war in northern Ethiopia, and where Amharas have formed a delegation, the Amhara People's Negotiation Delegation that consisted different leaders from different groups of Amharas. They have expressed their readiness to join that negotiation effort so that it can be inclusive and it can be a stepping stone for sustainable peace in northern Ethiopia. Unfortunately, that was not well received, and therefore that process was exclusive, and it turned out to be a sort of pact agreement between TPLF and Oromo Prosperity Party. But then even that agreement was not implemented. I think the peace deal required TPLF to be disarmed. That never happened. In fact, the lead negotiator for the Ethiopian government, Redouan Hussein, who is also the advisor for the prime minister, publicly told parliament members why TPLF should be disarmed. And this is contrary to what the peace deal required. Obviously, there was a plan of transitional government in Tigray that didn't happen. In fact, what happened is TPLF is back in power, and they've continued to do what they know, which is embezzling resource from poor Ethiopians, as the recent selling of aid that was sent to residents in Tigray, that the USAID and the Wallet Fund program has said was being sold by TPLF cadres. So they're back in power, and they're continuing to do what they do. Naturally, the transitional that peace supposed to be a peace deal agreement also said there should be accountability mechanism. Obviously, that's almost forgotten at this point. Not even no one is talking, including TPLF, about accountability. And this is also one of the things we pointed out earlier. The exclusion of civil society organizations would turn this whatever peace negotiation process it is into a process of exchanging immunity to this warring parties, and that's what exactly happened. Obviously, the issue of Walkite in the Raya, what that peace process referred as contested areas. Although from Amhara's perspective, there was never contestation about the fact that people who live in those areas are Amharas, have always referred themselves, identified as an Amhara, and we're fighting to get recognition of that identity for 3 decades since TPLF annexed those areas. But that peace process said there would be a constitutional process to resolve the disagreement about the identity of the people and the areas in Walkite and Raya, but that's never pursued. Nothing happened. So what that peace deal process had become is again a security pact agreement between TPLF and OPP, and that has to do with what we're discussing today, obviously, as we will discuss in a moment. But just also to recap what has happened elsewhere, obviously, Amhara genocide in Oromia has continued after that cessation of hostilities. Abiy and HoA continued to kill and ethnically cleanse Amharas from Oromia. And as you might have seen, the Amhara region have confirmed that about 1 million people have been displaced recently from Oromia, Amharas who fled from Oromia region into Amhara region, and therefore that Amhara genocide and ethnic cleansing in Oromia has continued. But also, after the cessation of hostilities between TPLF and OPP signed, Abiy expanded the ethnic cleansing into Addis Ababa and surrounding areas. We know the establishment of city, Sugar City, a city according to Oromia region president that is designed to make Addis Ababa irrelevant politically and economically by encircling and choking Addis Ababa essentially. So that was established sometime in December, and then soon after, house demolitions of particularly on Amharas and other ethnic groups continued, and so that process again, what it did was it expanded the area of ethnic cleansing that was limited into what one can say, at least at the largest scale, into Oromia region, into Western Oromia, to Addis Ababa and surrounding areas. Obviously, Addis Ababa has been hell for Amhara since Abiy came to power. We all know what happened to Balderas, and the fact that Iskender gave up on trying to bring change through the Balderas movement. But also, since the agreement was signed, there was intensification of crackdown on Amharas, even before this Amhara resistance to the effort to disarm Fano and Amhara Special Force was started. There was a scaling up of crackdown on Amharas. People who criticized the cessation of hostilities, or in reality, security pact agreement between TPLF and OPP were thrown to jail. Several of them are still in jail. The restriction of access to Addis Ababa, obviously, that at some point even led into contestation between, the master and the messenger. That's the master being OPP and Biden being the messenger of OPP. Even this frequent restriction of access to Amhara's traveling from Amhara region to Addis Ababa was to a degree that loyalist forces such as Biden were not willing to tolerate, so that led into tension. But that has still continued, and we also remember the restrictions of celebration of national holidays such as Adwa, the killings that happened, by regime forces who fired and killed people that went in to celebrate Adwa. And all this is done while the regime continues to bring celebrations that are deemed as Oromo communities from Oromia region into Addis Ababa, number of.
Hello. Hona, if you were speaking, you became muted. Okay, maybe. Okay, while Hona sorts out his issue, Ted, if there's anything you wanted to add regarding context.
I think Honey did a pretty good job, in terms of covering context, and just to add to that is part of the reason for covering the context. The title is as I said earlier, because I think this has important implications. Obviously on Amharas, the region. When I mean the region, the Amhara region, Ethiopia, and also the greater Horn of Africa. And without, we believe that Amharas by and large are doing their part, but it requires, an effort from the international community to resolve a lot of these contesting issues and to have peace in the country and within the region. I see Hone is back. Hone, go on ahead and finish your thought, and then we can turn it over to Robel.
Sorry about that. I don't know at what point you were not able to hear me, but I was just saying that the restriction of celebration of events in Addis Ababa that are deemed as a national holiday that many Amharas and other ethnic groups celebrate, while at the same time the regime continues to relocate events from Oromia region to Addis Ababa and bring Oromo surrounding Addis Ababa to kind of show force and intimidate Amharas and others in Addis Ababa. But also, we also remember Abiy and Oromo forces, attacked the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, and this was right after they took over the Muslim Council by removing, the previous leadership. So essentially, they're not attacking only Ethiopian Orthodox Church, but they're also attacking Muslim institutions and making sure all those institutions are under their command or under their loyalists. We also have witnessed a crackdown against the Guragis and Walaitas in the south who refuse to surrendering areas or political loyalty to OPP. So that still continues. And we've also seen the effort by OPP forces to annex areas from the newly established Sidama region. In fact, that led into killing of dozens of Sidama people near Awasa. But ultimately, since that cessation of hostilities, Abiy's paranoia over Amharas have turned into, essentially, a war against Amharas in alliance with other forces. And it's important to remember one of the first speeches Abiy made in his early days in power. For instance, in Bahardar, he was transparent to say that he is concerned of Amharas continuing to organize themselves, and the Amhara nationalist movement should be paused. So he expressed his paranoia over Amharas being organized early in his days, but also he has continued to reinforce that fear every time he goes into the media, for instance, or in the parliament. On one occasion, he has said, if anyone was to take power from him, hundreds, thousands of Amharas will be killed overnight. This is, in on record in front of Parliament, and he has also, said this to a number of people that are close to him, that used to be his, so to say, propagandists. Some of them are starting to openly discuss what Abiy has told them about Amharas and his fear that Amharas will come after his power, and as if he has a legitimate right to hold on to power forever, as if the power doesn't belong to the people, and as if Amhara seeking power is a crime. He has several of them, are opening up now to say what Abiy has privately told them, that he's very paranoid when it comes to Amharas, and his only focus in office is to make sure the state apparatus is focused on keeping Amharas on the toes, divided, and kind of make sure like Amharas are not organized, or at least are the pace of organization is slowed down. And I think that is why he recently started negotiating with OLA, although we know there is an alliance between OLA and Abiy, and the ethnic cleansing and genocide in Oromia against Amharas is a joint project, because he's increasingly feeling threatened by Amharas. He's now like consolidating his Oromo base and bringing everything under centralized leadership. So that is what we think is the motivation for recent negotiation with OLA in Tanzania. But as I said earlier, that didn't lead into the stopping of the killing of Amharas in Oromia. That has still continued. So all this to kind of recap what has happened since the cessation of hostilities was signed in Pretoria. And this is not an exhaustive list, but it shows a trend, which is that contrary to what the international media tries to portray, which is that the cessation of hostilities in Pretoria is a step to bring peace to Ethiopia. It actually, the reality is far from that, and Abiy has continued to wage multiple wars against different ethnic groups, including Amharas, against century-old institutions, and has continued to use the state apparatus as a way of manufacturing crisis rather than promoting peace and stability. I'll stop here, and I will invite Robel to kind of touch on particularly the effort by Abiy to disarm and disband or Amhara Special Forces and other Amhara armed groups.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Hona. Thank you, Ted. Before I get into it, just a reminder, everyone, this space is going to be recorded. So just be sure to share with your friends, but also if you're not able to listen to the whole space, you can find it after it will be made available. We've also taken the liberty of pinning some relevant links to the top of the page. So you can actually go and look at those things. Oh, sorry, can you guys hear me? Ted, Hona, can you hear me?
Yep, clearly.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I was just saying we've pinned some links to the top, so there are some relevant updates there that can be shared. There's videos, there's interviews, and all these types of things which you might find relevant. So moving back to the main subject matter, we're actually there's a lot that's happened, as Hona and Ted had described the context leading up to the current war on Amhara, and the current war on Amhara is something that had many different causes, but a major one was actually the process of dissolving the Amhara Special Forces or the regional forces. And this was a major issue, and it was very controversial for many reasons. But there was an official reasoning from the book that was provided by the ruling party, and then there was the actual reasoning that was seen in practice that activists, that analysts, and everyone else were able to follow and to criticize. So officially, the government was actually justifying this move by talking about a move to unify or restructure the defense structure. So when we talk about the defense structure, the regional special forces are one aspect, but there's also the national defense forces, the federal police, and other structures. And so all those process was non-transparent. So the government kind of imposed this without actually consulting the public. There was actually there was this attempt to explain it by talking about a restructuring. And following this, what happened was there were widespread protests and turmoil because even the ASF itself was not properly consulted. And we saw statements from various government officials, including the head of the National Defense Forces, Field Marshal Burhanu Jula, who then went on to actually blame the public for misleading the special forces. So this was in the official capacity what we saw, but the actual implication was that the special force was targeted specifically and selectively in Amhara region. So the other special forces, for example, the Oromia special forces, were not targeted, were not disarmed. And this is important to note because AAA's reporting actually implicated the Oromia special forces in various acts of ethnic cleansing against ethnic Amharas throughout the Oromia region, especially in the Wallagga area. But also other media reports had implicated the Oromia special forces of committing ethnic cleansing in Afar, Somali, Gambela, Sidama, Gurage, and the Benishangul communities. So this was a special force that was actually criticized by many different groups, including some of the Oromo political groups. And there was no effort seen or no indication of the Oromia special forces being selective or being disarmed. So this was a very important issue to see. And the other implication was that this left essentially a security gap for the Amhara region and for its residents, which actually had many different types of threats from different directions, which I'll get into. And of course, as following the war in northern Ethiopia, there was the issue of the disputed territories of Walqait and Raya, which were returned to Amhara control as a result of the war, but which continued to face security threats by the TPLF. And so the lack of a comprehensive solution of Walqait and Raya from the Pretoria deal also paved the way for uncertainty and for eventual further conflict. And lastly, there was also a precedent set for further unilateral actions by the central government because this decision was actually constitutional. Now, as Amharas, we actually generally do not endorse the Constitution, but just from the Constitution point of view, it was unconstitutional because the Constitution itself, in Article 52, protects the regional state's right to actually have a special police force. So if this case is one in which that is overturned and the federal government can impose its will, then we can actually anticipate that further impositions could be undertaken in the future. And so coming back to this Amhara Special Forces, the Amhara Special Forces were perceived differently by different groups. For Amharas, this was a force that actually provided regional stability and peace, as I talked about earlier, there was anticipation of attacks from multiple sides. So from the north, we have TPLF. From the south and the east, we have OLA. And then we even have other forces, such as the Sudan forces on the western frontier. And so this force was very important for protecting the safety and security of Amharas, because the public had lost trust in Abiy's government and also the federal government, the federal forces, the ENDF, because the ENDF had failed to protect the Amhara people in multiple instances, including during the war in northern Ethiopia, when the Amhara and Afar regions were overrun by the TPLF and the OLA, and the ENDF was not seen as an effective means of defending the people. And so the other thing is that, again, coming back to this concept of unification and centralization, the federal government is dominated by the Oromo Prosperity Party. This is an ethnic-based party that is organized based on the interests of the looking after the Oromo people in the Oromia region. And so having this federal force controlled by the Oromo Prosperity Party did not inspire any type of reliability, and there was increasing trends of the ENDF actually being dominated by the Oromo ethnic group, with persecution of non-Oromo groups, particularly ethnic Amharas, as well as the leadership, including Field Marshal Birhanu Jula and his other generals, who had tendencies to scapegoat, target, and blame Amharas for many of their own shortcomings. So that's the implication from the Amhara point of view. From the federal side, there was an interesting interview by General Tefera Mamo, who actually mentioned how the Amhara Special Forces were praised during the course of the war. And so during the course of the war, when the actual National Defense Forces were being pushed back by the TPLF, it was clear that the Amhara Special Forces, the role of the Amhara Special Forces was critical in defending that structure and in essentially safeguarding the national security interest, not only the regional interest. And then finally, by the TPLF, there was this perception of the Amhara Special Forces as being a force that was dangerous and opposed to their interests of basically taking over power by force. And so this force was seen as an impediment, because the Amhara forces were seen as more capable, more trained, more devoted to the cause, as compared to the national forces, which they seem to not have as much of a problem with. And so finally, the outcome of this decision was that there were protests across the Amhara region. So the Amhara Special Force decision was actually a large part of the protests, although it wasn't the major reason. And my colleagues will get more into the protests after this. But the protests were largely because the people wanted to see protection of Amhara people, defense from the Amhara genocide, and these other demands. And then finally, the outcome was that a large portion of the special forces did not return to their barracks. The Amhara Region Prosperity Party official, Girma Ishitala, actually admitted that at least 30% did not return. And so this can actually be seen as an underestimate of the actual figure, because we know that the federal or the regional government and the federal government have not been known to be forthcoming with numbers and statistics. And so the actual percentage or the actual statistic is likely to be much, much higher. And then following the protests and the unrest, there was essentially a fleeing of the Amhara region officials from Bahar Dar, according to several reports. And so this led to the protests. And maybe, Hona, if you're able to speak, you can talk a little bit about the protests.
Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me, Gabriel?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I guess this decision was met with heavy resistance by Amharas across the region and outside the region. Several towns and cities in the region have protested. I think in a week alone, there were more than 30 towns and cities within the region that protested against this decision, road blockages and all that. But there were also armed confrontation between the Amhara Special Forces that refused to disarm and disband, and we're joining other groups in several places such as Gondar, Wallo, and HoA. So there were major casualties almost since the initial, I think, confrontation started 3 weeks ago, but more recently, in the past week or so, we've seen clashes in Gondar, in HoA, in Wallo, and The Gondar and Wollo are a little bit calmer today, but the HoA fighting is still ongoing. Actually, in those areas, some cities such as Debrecina, Shorobit, and other areas are out of NDF's control, and a number of Fano groups are in charge of those cities. But in Gondar, there was a discussion yesterday that led into sort of an understanding between Fano groups and Amhara or the NDF camp soldiers there. So essentially, the report is NDF has agreed to, at least for now, to abandon the idea of disarming Fanos and Amharas, and have asked permission to bring their soldiers back into campus, and they have aborted their plan to attack some of the Fanos in Gondar area, and have agreed to take up some of the questions, such as the issue of non-stop killing of Amharas, and the issue of still continuing fighting between NDF and Fano groups in other areas into the federal government. Obviously, that can only be understood as a temporary arrangement where the regime is trying to buy time. In Wollo, there's still more resources, more units being sent by Abiy into areas that Fanos are assumed to be located. But the Fanos have been successful in kind of mounting attacks that the NDF has launched so far, and have caused significant casualties in several areas. Obviously, there were civilian casualties, and soldiers are, they increasingly being frustrated with their inability to deliver on the instruction given by Oromo Prosperity Party, which is disarming Amharas, and they're firing on civilians. We've seen the killings in Marawi, where about 10 people were killed in Kopo. Also the Oromo Prosperity Party led and the defense forces also, going into houses of civilians in several parts, particularly in Kopo area, where they're taking individual properties, including like gold and other valuable items. So the confrontation is still ongoing, and I think this is an evolving situation. So we'll continue to monitor and report. But the question is, what's at the core of this resistance for Amharas? I think ultimately this is not the first time Amharas are resisting against Abiy, and that's that. It is important to remember that Amhara region have seen multiple rounds of protests since Abiy came to power in 2019, 2020, 2021, and 22 as well. So this is not new in a sense, like Amharas are challenging or resisting Abiy's ongoing genocide against Amharas in Oromia, and attempt to subjugate Amharas. But it's also, I think, it's also a significant development in terms of framing the question. If you remember, Amhara resistance started in 2016, and there were several questions that protesters carried back then. Just to briefly mention those, back then there was a call to end the killing of Amharas that live outside Amhara region. There was a call for resolving Amhara identity and border questions in Walkait and Raya and other areas in Oromia and Benishangul Gomez. There was also a demand for federal and regional constitutions to be revised and amended, and so that the discriminatory provisions in both federal and regional constitutions are revised, and Amharas can equal rights and recognized as citizens, because the reality is Amharas are not recognized as citizens. They are stateless by regional constitutions such as Oromia, where they are not recognized as even equal citizens. There was also as a proper demand for proper representation of Amharas in cities like Dredwa, where they're the second largest group, but they don't have any political representation, while other less demographically powerful groups such as the Oromos and the Arares and the Somalis have a protected quotas for political representation. So for the past few years, particularly 2018, 2019, there was a hope that Abiy might kind of initiate a national process where Amharas and others would negotiate about these questions. But now it has come clear to Amharas and to every observer that Abiy is not interested in answering these questions. Abiy never answered any of these questions, although the Amhara resistance movement contributed to him coming to the position he has now. Since he took on power, he was essentially dismissing questions and postponing the agendas of these questions. For instance, in Bardar, as I said earlier, he said, the constitution will not be amended because just for Amharas. Imagine this is Amharas are like more than 30, 40 million probably in Ethiopia, and a prime minister is saying the question of 40 million Amharas is not enough to initiate a revision process or amendment to the constitutional process. But also he has continued to use the Wolkite and Raja identity and border questions as a way of leverage against Amharas and as a way of incentivizing support from other camps. So now I think these resistance movements are picking up those questions and are making the same demand that the government is not willing to answer these questions. So we want a new political dispensation, a new political settlement in Ethiopia, and Abiy has been given an opportunity to respond to these questions that were at the center of the Amhara resistance back in 2016. He has opted to rather intensify the problems of Amharas and even ended up scaling up the genocide that's happening against Amharas. So at this point, the questions are triggered by, these protesters are triggered by the immediate, effort of Abiy to disarm Amharas, but the demands people are expressing are way beyond, protecting the Fanus or Amhara Special Force members. This has become a question of Abiy has been given the opportunity and has failed, and therefore this is time for a new political dispensation in the country. So the outcome of this past couple of weeks events is Abiy has unified Amharas against his regime, and he has effectively delegitimized APP, whatever legitimacy APP had, or whatever false hopes people had about APP. It has become clear that that's not going to yield into anything concrete, and APP is now a bubble. It's in the air, like it alienated from the region, and not even the regional leaders not even feeling safe to be in the region, and they are in Addis essentially serving Abiy, but also without any influence in the region. So the outcome is APP is essentially paralyzed and delegitimized, and the Amharas are unified, and Abiy is forcing sort of an insurgency. Amharas have been hesitant to pick up arms, and I think they were patient, to resolve the matter through discussions, through negotiations. But the fact that Abiy is going after Fanu while negotiating with OLA, while negotiating and signing that agreement with TPLF, those are forces that were designated as terrorists by the regime's parliament itself. the fact that is Abiy is giving a chance to sit on the table for these people, but denying that opportunity for those who protected his power by fighting both TPLF. So essentially, that's giving the Samaras no option other than picking up, armies to try to answer the question. Is this demand is through liberation struggle? So he has essentially forced an emergency of an Amhara insurgency, and there's for a couple of years there was a mix-upping of alliances, and the recent events have clarified who is on the side of Amhara people and who is interested to just use Amharas as a springboard for power or other kinds of benefits. So one other outcome of this recent development has been Amharas have come to know their true sons and daughters and their true allies, and have rejected others who were, hovering around Amharas to try to be relevant, while in actually they're anti-Amhara and have no contribution to the Amhara movement. So those are some of the outcomes that Abiy has gained, and this will have further implications in regional implications, which we will come back to in a moment. But now I think I'll perhaps I can invite Ted to talk briefly about how the international community has taken all these developments and have responded.
Thank you, Hone. In terms of, when we look at the response from the international, community, it's a mixed bag, right? Since the decision to dissolve the Amhara Special Forces, and there were, wide-ranging protests, across the region, and the protests, combination of, Amhara Special Forces with the people and the Fanos, there was initially a coverage by some of the Western media. And so, what AAA did was basically gather the information of what was happening on the ground, casualties against civilians, the clashes, and initially there was coverage of that. And this is, before the civil war started in Sudan. And there have been some condemnations from, some human rights organizations, such as CPJ, Committee to Protect Journalists, Amnesty International, Limkin Institute, and others. But what has been clear is the silence of the international institutions such as the United Nations, the African Union, and Western governments. And these are the institutions, the Western governments, UN and AU, that played a role in these in the cessation of hostilities. While there is a complete internet blackout, a crackdown against Amaras, who are the Amara leaders, whether they be in Amara student associations, politicians, journalists, even while some of the human rights organizations have been vocal, silence from these from Western governments in the UN and the AU, which is very concerning. And the message to the Amhara community, really from these institutions, is that you have to be a disrupting force in order for us to gain your attention. And that's really the message. That yes, we will recognize and support and acknowledge negotiations between armed groups and the Abiy regime. However, if you are not picking up a gun, if you are not fighting in an organized manner, and if you're not a recognized and organized armed group, we're not going to acknowledge you. So what they're saying is that what the West is essentially doing is incentivizing conflict. That they will only come in when the conflict gets to the point to where their interest is either at risk or they find a force that may help safeguard their interests. And that is something that really the message that the Amhara community is seeing. One of the things that's concerning is that Western governments, downplayed the humanitarian crisis that Amharas had faced, before the war, during the war, and even after the cessation of hostilities. Were there a few, statements here and there? There were, but by and large, it has been either ignored or downplayed, and this has been very frustrating for Amharas, including some of the human rights organizations, and that's why, organizations like ours, AAA, and other Amhara organizations have been going directly to the Western media, or let me just say, not Ethiopian medias, African medias, Western media, and other media sources to educate the public about what's happening to Amaras. Um, when the West was pushing for the cessation of hostilities agreement, they, really, they ignored Amaras. The Amaras were ready and willing and able to represent their interests. However, this request was denied, and it was not because for lack of trying, for lack of engagement from the Amhara community. However, they pushed for this negotiation between the TPLF and the Abiy and the Oromo-led Prosperity Party. As we've said earlier, and as we've said many times over, Amaras are the largest affected group in this war. However, they were denied representation. The issues and the interests of Amaras cannot be represented by Abiy or any other group. And that's why we have been telling the international community that if we want a lasting peace in Ethiopia and the region, that every group that is affected by this war should be represented. And that's why Amaras are, feel like they have no choice but to defend themselves, to pick up arms and respond to the crisis the threat that they are facing. If Amaras, were participants in the negotiation, I don't think we would be seeing what we are seeing right now. They would feel that their interests were represented, safeguarded by people that they trust, people that they believe have their best interests at heart. And it is not the Amhara Prosperity Party, as Hone was saying earlier. What Abiy has done as a result of this current crisis is completely delegitimize the Amhara Prosperity Party. They are not even in Bahadar, they are in Addis Ababa. That's how fearful they are. So how can Abiy it will be impossible for Abiy to rule this region again using the Amhara Prosperity Party. So I think the last point is on this is that that the West's approach to Ethiopia, and even when you look at the West's approach to what's going on in Sudan, has shown that it is incentivizing conflict, and any group that comes forward uh, in advance and say, before a conflict begins, let's begin negotiating, let's begin talking, is receiving a deaf ear, is receiving silence. And that is not helpful. And that is the trend that we have been seeing in Ethiopia and other parts, in other parts in Africa. That doesn't mean that we give up in terms of like engaging international institutions such as the African Union, the United Nations, our other other governments across the world. It is our obligation, especially those of us who are in the diaspora, who have the capacity, the capability, to continue to engage, to continue to pressure, to continue to educate, for better policies towards Ethiopia, because these are our people who are suffering. These are people who are facing a genocide. These are people who are, potential, who are facing subjugation, and especially in those places outside of the Amhara region, who are essentially stateless, without a home. So that does not mean that we do not continue this engagement, but we have to be at the forefront of this engagement. We have to lead on this effort, in order for in order for us to be heard, and for order for us to be at that negotiation table. It's going to come, because it's going into that direction. What we are seeing right now is a low-level insurgency that has the potential of growing into a much larger insurgency across the Amhara region and beyond. And this can lead into outside actors, within the Horn of Africa being involved, as well as superpowers who have an interest, regional actors from the Gulf and outside, to be engaged and be involved, to secure their interests in the country and looking for partners. I'll stop there and turn it over to Juan in terms of like to talk about where this can potentially go. Thank you.
Robel, do you wanna take on that point? I can come back on after you, I guess.
Sure, sure. Thanks, Hona. Can you both hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Hona. I think we touched on a lot of very key issues here because there's a resistance that has actually been triggered by and intensified over many years because of the targeting of the Amhara people. When we talk about this war, this recent war being genocidal, it's with reason. And I think a key point that we really need to emphasize is that Amharas are being put into internment camps. Their bank accounts are being frozen. There's a mass crackdown targeting thousands of Amharas, including journalists, opposition figures, students, including members of the Amhara Students Association, business owners. So Amharas from all walks of life are being rounded up and put into these camps. And residents of many cities and towns across the Amhara region are finding that they no longer have access to their banking services. They no longer have access to transportation. And for a long time, there's been a blockage of a restriction of travel from Amhara region to Addis Ababa, the federal capital. So amidst an internet blackout, amidst the regime calling Amharas terrorists as a euphemism, inciting hatred and Amharaphobia, amidst mass arrests, even in the Oromia region, we're seeing that there is basically a trajectory of this thing heading into an all-out civil war. And I think it's really important to talk about where is this all going to go. When we talk about the Amhara region being in chaos, we're talking about something over 30 million people, right? Just in the Amhara region alone. And this is a region that shares borders with Sudan on the west, and then Eritrea to the north. And then you have a developing civil war in Sudan that's already displaced over 1 million people from Khartoum alone. And then from other parts of the country, you have tens of thousands of casualties. And this is conflict on top of conflict. As my colleagues mentioned before, following the signing of the Pretoria deal, Ethiopia did not see peace because Amharas continued to be targeted in many types of targeted massacres, targeted persecution, and this even took on a religious form. But what's really problematic is that you had interregional conflicts within the country, but also even between countries. You had the Sudan forces invading and occupying parts of Ethiopia, particularly in Western Amhara region. And now, when you have a civil war with thousands of refugees pouring into Ethiopia from the border, and then you have conflict in the Amhara region, you have refugees coming into a place where there's additional conflict and another displacement crisis happening as well. So there's essentially a very, very large conflict zone being created, and then this has potential to get worse and worse and worse until it expands and engulfs the entire Horn of Africa. And then you're talking about more than 100 million, more than 150 million, 160 million people. And so this is very, very catastrophic. It could have implications not just for the Horn, but to the Gulf. It could have implications for the Middle East, the Mediterranean. We know about the existing migrant crisis and all of the issues associated with that, but we're actually now seeing a trajectory exacerbated by poor governance, right? So in Ethiopia, you have the Abiy regime and you have the TPLF. The TPLF to the north also, there's indications they want to remobilize and re-wage war, a fourth round of war against the Amhara. What could that mean? Well, the TPLF is centered on, or is fixated on, re-annexing, re-stealing these territories known as Welkait and Raya. And remember, Welkait is a region that borders Amhara, that borders Tigray to its east, borders Sudan to its west, borders Eritrea to its north. And so if you have this Welkait area alone becoming another war zone, then you're going to have a very severe spillover of the conflict zone. And then you're going to have Eritrea being pulled into the conflict. As we saw at the beginning of the Northern Ethiopia War, the TPLF attacked all of its neighbors. It attacked Amhara to its south and to its west. It attacked Afar. It attacked Eritrea. And so you have an imminent conflict because this could actually intensify the existing war on Amharas. And so this has potential to actually become something very, very large. And then when this happens, you're going to invite foreign actors and international powers into the conflict. And we don't have to get into the specifics, but you have lots of actors with interests in the region. When you look at a country like, for example, Djibouti, you have many different military bases in Djibouti. You have competing interests in Sudan, and ultimately you're going to have this region becoming essentially a cluster for proxy war, for competing interests. And this is not good for the people of Ethiopia. This is not good for our neighbors. But this trend of forcing insurgency onto Amharas is very problematic, because now you have people, Amharas from all walks of society, being targeted, and it doesn't matter if they have political leanings. As an Amhara in Ethiopia, right now, the state has waged war on you. The state is taking away your individual liberties. And so people who were previously not political and who wanted to be, say, neutral, have no option but to be advocates. You have people being forced to fight. And so this is a war of this is a conflict and a resistance about identity, about self-preservation. When we talked about the disputed territories of Walqait and Raya, you have the Oromo extremist officials who want to annex parts of southeastern Amhara. They want to annex Shoa, they want to annex Wallo. And that's why right now you have a very fierce struggle in those areas, because those people, if they don't fight, these are the OLA, the Oromia Special Forces. They want to come in, ethnically cleanse them, eliminate the residents there in the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands, take their land, and then annex it into the Oromia region. And we saw these attempts happen in the past in the parts of Minjar Shankora and Dera, in all of these areas. And so you have a very, very dangerous situation where a country is led by a government who claims on the one side to be wanting to centralize and unify the country, but in practice is actually effectively trying to create an ethno-fascist state, and then potentially an ethnically homogenous state. So this is very, very dangerous. You have Ethiopia situated next to the Red Sea, which is a major trade route. And then again, when you have conflict spreading and this conflict zone widening, you're going to have a very, very huge impact for the global economy. So this has potential to go in this direction and essentially destabilize the entire Horn for these reasons. And next, I want to give maybe HoA an opportunity just to continue from where I left off. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess the priority for us, people in the region, in Ethiopia and surrounding, is, there is an impending, humanitarian crisis that could be the largest since World War II, with, civil war in Ethiopia, Sudan, South Sudan. The countries have always been fragile, but, right now there is active engagement or civil war in several of these countries. And I think it's up to us to really push for fundamental solutions rather than treating the symptoms. We need to seek fundamental political resolutions that will restore peace in the region and in Ethiopia in particular. And also the international community needs to acknowledge, this danger and should as Teda said earlier, so far the engagement of peacemakers, supposed peacemakers, assigned or self-prescribed peacemakers in the region has been actually to intensify conflicts rather than making peace or bringing peace into those regions. And I think it's also the approach should be to even call out those organizations and countries for their role in intentionally or unintentionally exacerbating the situation, making the conflict worse. But also the international community needs to, I think, particularly for Amhara, there has been a humanitarian crisis that have been created for since the war in northern Ethiopia, but has been intensified following the region's war on parts of Amhara region more recently. So that humanitarian need should be a center of our messaging, and I think a number of organizations needed this kind of nagging, unfortunately, to really pay attention. So we have to continue to push for that humanitarian aid to be scaled up, and of course that the delivery should also be carefully scrutinized, and the regime should not be given life by abducting or diverting resources that's sent to humanitarian aid, like we saw in the Tigray region recently. But all these are, I think, the humanitarian need cannot be kind of resolved sustainably by external actors. Ultimately, Ethiopians should realize the fact that it's now time for a post Abiy political settlement in Ethiopia. Abiy was, the most supported leader in Ethiopia's modern history, and he has now become the most, hated leader, so to say, the most despised, not by Ethiopians alone, even by leaders within the region. He has turned Ethiopia into a shit show. The way he does diplomacy, the way he governs, the way he talks, it has been disastrous. But for Ethiopians, since he came, the country has become hell. He has turned Ethiopia into hell, and the international community should learn from its past mistakes and should push for a fundamental reset in Ethiopia, where all these competing groups sit and negotiate. And Ethiopians also should learn from that mistake. Like in 2018, people who were calling for a more comprehensive agenda, people who questioned, Abiy's ability to deliver what many Ethiopians are yearning for, were dismissed, were called names, were referred as pessimists. I think we should not. We should be honest to ourselves. We should not expect Abiy will resolve the crisis in Ethiopia. He has been tested and failed, and he has to go and face justice for the crimes he has committed in several parts of Ethiopia. And so neither Abiy nor this TPLF Amhara Prosperity Party are part of the solution for Ethiopia. We should seek for a fundamental change in that country. We have seen what quasi reforms have done to Sudan. We have lived through experience of supposed to be reform in Ethiopia in 2018, and what we are now living through the devastating consequence of such kind of minor level reforms that treat the symptoms. We should demand like fundamental change in Ethiopia, where we can sit down and negotiate on our interests and set a path that can accommodate different interests. We never had this conversation. I think we should not be afraid of having tough conversations, but that cannot happen within the framework of a structure that is cause of the problem, which is APRDF, it's post APRDF leftover, which is the PP and TPLF. So there should be a fundamental change in Ethiopia, and that involves accountability as a part of this change. In 2018, TPLF and other APRDF members were given a free ride. They were obligated of the crimes they committed. The Pretoria and Kenya agreements did the same thing. The only way to break this cycle is to push for accountability for all crimes committed by this EPRDF members. And I think as Amharas, that's probably the messaging I think we should push. And obviously, there's a effort to synchronize this messaging across countries, across continents. So protests will be held across the globe, and there are Amhara organizations working on this right now. And I think over the last couple of months, we have seen how anyone who is Amhara and who dares to make a political comment, even those who were not that hostile to the regime are all thrown into jail, and it's our responsibility, unfortunately, to support them in these times, and we should support them by covering legal expenses and support their family members, and for that there's a legal and humanitarian fund that's being launched soon by Amhara organizations, where we all contribute to covering the lawyer fees and the certain humanitarian needs of families of these political detainees. There will be a centralized GoFundMe that will be launched by Amhara organizations soon. Obviously, there's a need to join and strengthen Amhara organizations in your area. Please continue supporting them, join them, and there are a number of other activities such as the social media engagement. Is I think people who are holding Twitter space discussions daily, frequently. Keep doing what you're doing. The impact is more than what you would imagine. Or you might realize, and there are also efforts to kind of set up a mechanism where we can we can consolidate our engagement with human rights organizations, holding events with these human rights organizations in your area, educating colleagues around your workspace, around your living area. But also, I think there's an effort to engage lobbying efforts at a better scale. So the Amhara organizations will be holding or hiring other support organizations, I guess so to say. Those who are within the Amhara organization circle will know more about this within those structures. And I think there's still a need to educate international community of social media. That would mean holding English programs in medias. There's Magar weekly English program, but I think we need to have more programs. So those of you who are in the diaspora, who are fluent in English and can host programs, please step up and host English programs where you can invite policymakers, relevant policymakers, and confront them. That would be a much more impactful engagement than obviously Twitter-based discussions and campaigns, although those are important. We also have to continue write letters and all that. So I guess I don't want to go into the details of all this because that will be communicated through our organization's networks. But I want to say that yes, the situation is getting worse in Ethiopia. Our people are suffering large scale genocide, but at the same time over the last 2 years we have achieved some political gains. Regaining Walqaiti and Raya and maintaining them is again that one gain. The fact that the OPP structure is paranoid over Amharas, what we are doing, what we can be doing. That also is a force of the show of our force and what we can do together. So yes, there are stories that could be depressive, but I think let's get up every day to try to focus on what we can do, what's my role as an individual, as a member of a certain collective, and what can I do at my scale, and be inspired by some of the small gains we have secured and larger gains that we will collectively achieve. So I'll invite you to kind of continuously engage with this organizations, and particularly our organizations, where we will continue to send this detailed plans. I'll stop there. I think unless Ted and Robel has something to add, we can open up for question and answer.
Just real quick, I wanted to add to one of the things that you said, HoA. I think one of the things that has done to the Amhara community, this past few years, all these, from the genocide to the subjugation of Amharas in Ethiopia, it has brought Amharas closer together. It has unified Amharas against Abiy. There was this confusion during the war about where, by some people within the Amhara community, by some within the Amhara community, in terms of like, what is what, in what direction should we be headed? How do we view, Abiy? Even though, as um, we have said earlier, that there have been more protests, more uprisings against Abiy within the Amhara region than any other group. So this has really strengthened our movement. It has made us much more resolved. You have seen the growth of Amara organizations across the globe. Amara organizations are, springing up, all, every just constantly. And then when they spring up, they are coming and joining the various umbrella organizations, in whether it be in the U.S., Canada, or are in Australia, and bringing our resources to try to make a difference. The growth of the Amhara consciousness and awakening, as AAA, when we started in 2016, just to be frank, we had anticipated at that time that it might take us, 10, 15, or 20 years to get our people to the point to where they understand what is happening to them, to have this Amara consciousness, to have this, of understanding of where our, the threats and the dangers that our people are facing. It didn't take that long. It happened much faster, and of course, part of the reason why it happened is because of the genocide that our people are facing. So, and when you're seeing the Amara-centric medias that have started, that has also helped accelerate Amara consciousness, and the understanding and the information that Amaras are getting. Information is much more decentralized, and when I mean information, just Ethiopian information. Our engagement with the, with the international community has improved, and has scaled up. We do need to do more, but it is significantly more than when it used to be a few years ago. So that is something that we should be, proud of, and something that is a positive, takeaway. For those of you in the U.S., as Honey was saying earlier, there's election in 2024. This is critical. These members of Congress, senators, House of Representatives, mayors, people running for governor, city council, town council, are going to be running for office. Go and are going to be having town halls. Go to those town halls, speak up, communicate. For those of you that can, volunteer, be present. The Amhara community has a political action committee here in the U.S. called Amhara PAC. You can donate to Amhara PAC. It is a way for us to have influence and access and influence to candidates that are running for office. This is one method, that we can educate, policymakers. So please be engaged. Just find a way to be engaged on a daily basis. There is great opportunities for you to make a difference. So use that opportunity. I'll stop there. Thank you. Robert, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Hona. So at this point, I think we've finished with communicating our main points. And I would like to invite people from the audience to join us on stage. You can raise your hands, and we'll give you an opportunity to ask questions. Just keep in mind that to ask questions, you'll have to declare your first and last name, your city, and whether you have any organizational affiliations, and then we will try to address your questions. So please raise your hands, and if not, we can move into wrapping up. Other than that, we've pinned some tweets at the top of this space, so you can please go through those, including there's a phone campaign that AAA organized for contacting your policymakers representatives in the United States and Canada. You can also find that by visiting AAA's Twitter page. It's the pinned tweet, and we'll be updating that in the near future. But that's a campaign that you can actively participate in on a regular basis to make sure that your representatives are informed and are educated about what's happening in Ethiopia, because the war on Amhara is unfolding on a daily basis, and it's our responsibility to make sure that our representatives are aware of that. And we're best positioned to do that because for us as members of, especially those of us in the diaspora, we have that access, and this is a very consequential action that we can be taking as advocates for our people. So I just remind you, please take advantage of your rights in that regard. To those of you who are belonging to institutions, whether they're academic institutions, others, if you have platforms, these are really good places where you can actually utilize to inform your circles of what's been happening in Ethiopia. And I think this is something that we all have to take on as Amhara. So I see that we're joined on the stage by Gobao. If Gobao has joined us on the stage, I'd like to give him a chance to ask his question. Okay, it appears Gobao has left the stage. So I think there was one other person who had messaged me about asking a question. I'm going to invite him on the stage as well. So please, if you would like to ask questions, just raise your hand and we'll let you on stage, okay? And I think we have another request from Gobao. Gobao, are you able to speak? Otherwise, welcoming Malaku to the stage as well. Maybe for this Gobao, if it's okay with you, Malaku had messaged me earlier on, so I'd like to give him the first opportunity, and then Gobao, you'll be right after. So Malaku, please unmute your mic and just tell us about yourself, and then you can ask your question. Thank you.
My name is Malaku Makonnen. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I had a couple of questions. One is I think first of all, I would like to say thank you for all what you do. I know you have a meeting with My Commerce on May 15, and my questions are: one, is it going to be recorded and available for us to see? The second question is, I believe, the U.S. administration have a false assumption regarding the FANOS. Are you going to be asking a question? His understanding and the administration understanding regarding FANO. Thank you.
Thank you, Malaku, for those questions. We have your questions. I'm going to give an opportunity for Gobao to ask his questions, and then we'll just answer all of them together. So Gobao, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ted, Robel, HoA. You guys are doing a wonderful job, and I'm gonna touch a few preface for my question, and then I'll ask my question. So it's clear that the Prime Minister has made himself that they will not be changed for 45 million Amharans. He has been consolidating power. Demographic change has been happening around Addis, eastern part of Ethiopia, western and the northern part of Ethiopia, and just to set their objective, and we know what their objective is. There is also beefing up the security, assuming that he's buying time to have quote unquote their Oromoma project. There is a huge misinformation campaign against Amharan using some profanity. Settlers and invaders, and they're coordinating this with other Kush. Amharans have not been pushing back enough, assuming that we live in the country, we have a political difference, and there is a lot of work has been done by you guys and others. But my question is, I guess, have we sent a strong message for the higher Tulama Oromo leaders, where it say this time it will not be 1988. This time it will not be 1984. This time Amharans will demand their God-given right, and then either we have a country or not. Currently, the constitution, there is no single Amharan party represented in installing this ethnic evil apartheid system. The Oromo system has been literally evil for every single Amharans. The concept of multinational state is no longer working for us. So have we sent that strong message for the Oromo leaders that unless they change now, they won't, this time will be different? That's my question.
Thank you, Gobal, for that question. Now I'd like to give an opportunity for either Ted or Hona, if you guys want to answer those questions. Please, either of you can go ahead.
Ted, do you want to go first, particularly on the meeting with Ambassador Amhara?
Sure. So AAA and the Amhara Association of Los Angeles will be hosting Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Ambassador Hammer, on May 14th in Los Angeles. And this is specifically for the Amhara community. In terms of what we will be covering with Ambassador Hammer, we will be covering all the issues that we've discussed here. There will not be any issue that has not been discussed here that's not going to be brought up with Ambassador Hammer. And this is not the first meeting, the first time that we have engaged with Ambassador Hammer. We've met with him probably on maybe 3 other occasions, and with other higher State Department officials as well, and including National Security Advisor Dana Banks. In terms of our engagement with policymakers here in the U.S., this is something that we have that we do on a continuous basis, and that we have been doing since 2016, because it's part of our mission as an organization to influence U.S. policy towards Ethiopia, and then for Amhara issues to be taken into consideration. There's really not a legislation that is introduced that we don't know about, that we don't have an influence in. Now, that does not mean that we will always endorse or support a legislation, but we will have an influence in that legislation. And so we will be, in terms of we'll be engaging Hammer on all these issues. There will be a private discussion with Ambassador Hammer before the public event. The public event, in terms of having it streamed, we'll probably may have it streamed live. In terms of the perception of Fanos, by whether it's U.S. policy makers in the State Department, or others. This is something collectively as Amaras that we have been doing in terms of educating the international community of who are Fanos, what are Fanos, including in our engagement with the United Nations. Educating them about what a Fano is, and what is the process to become a Fano. You just can't just declare yourself and just say that you are a Fano. It is part of our cultural heritage. It is part of who we are. It is part of our identity. Being a Fano. So this is something that we have been educating, and I think we've seen that on a wide scale by Amaras in general. The one thing that I want to say is that the advocacy work that we are doing here, diplomacy work that we are doing here, it also needs to be replicated, in other countries, and we're seeing that. We're seeing this in Canada right now. We're seeing it we've seen it in Australia, and we've seen it in different parts of Europe. Some of you might have, if you follow AAA on Twitter or Facebook or visit our website, you will see a letter that was written by Senator Ossoff from from Georgia to Secretary Blinken regarding the press freedom. And it's kind of interesting that this question was raised by Malako, who's from Atlanta, Georgia. So your Senator Ossoff, has written that letter, and this is the senator that is actually readily engaged his office with AAA, which is something that we appreciate, that level of engagement from an important senator and a rising senator. It's critically important that we always stay engaged in the diplomatic process, especially for those of us who live in Western democracies. Every election cycle gives us an opportunity to influence. New people come in without any any preconditions or any negative thoughts about Amaras or Ethiopia, and it's an opportunity for us to engage them, to educate them, and influence. So that's why we always say, please stay engaged, please stay active in the diplomatic process. We also encourage, for those of you who can, to even run for office, whether it's a mayor, town council, city city council. you know, state legislature. You know, there's, you know, it's, we should be that ambitious. You know, we come from a civilization that is of a people of, you know, a heritage that was very, very ambitious. So we should, you know, there's nothing wrong from us imagining running for office and being in charge of U.S. of you know, of policies that affect our people and our country, you know, Ethiopia and the broader region. We know what's best, you know, for Amaras, for Ethiopia, for the region. We should be involved and we should be engaged. And for the second part of the question, I'll let Hone respond to that.
Thanks, Ed. I guess to add a little bit about our talking point on Fano, I think it is important to mention that Fanos are freedom fighters. They are the ones who fought the Italians in the 1930s. They are a means to govern when the government fails to execute that function, which clearly is the case in Ethiopia for the last couple of years, if not for decades. And being Fano is a cultural fabric. You know, you cannot vilify Fano. That is vilifying one's culture and the culture of Amaras. So being Fano is also an earned position. You cannot claim to be a Fano. The people recognize you as a Fano, evaluating how much you are fair in your judgment, how much you are wise to govern an area, how much you protect and render justice, how much you are good at ensuring the security of the people nearby. So those are the judgment, the criteria to judge or to recognize as a Fano. So it's not, being Fano is not a claimed position. You have to earn it. And therefore, it's, people who come from outside of Amhara and talk about Fano have to demonstrate their awareness of the concept and familiarity of who is Fano. So we have been pushing this educative talking point, so not just to the U.S. government, but also to a number of other human rights organizations where there is a scapegoating of Fano and referring any Amhara that want to be criminalized as Fano. It is a concern that the way Fano is discussed is criminalizing Amhara's identity, is criminalizing our cultural practices, and this is antithesis to diplomacy. It's hostile and offensive to the people, and it is contrary to the value of culturally sensitive righteous discourse, where you cannot criminalize a whole cultural concept. So I think there's a need to educate that, and we've been trying to do that, and particularly explaining the sanctioning process for someone to be recognized as a Fano, because right now, people are talking, referring as an Amhara as that they want to be arrested or to be criminalized in such a way, and that is very inaccurate and very problematic and very, hostile to the people. And I think we're pushing on that, and we have to keep holding these organizations accountable when they talk about this Fano, that Fano. Have you checked those criteria to say that? And how? So I think there's a need to scale up that educative function, and a number of it is, it's the scale is bigger. It also goes into the way African countries are discussed in the Western literature. There is quickness to capitalize on non-state actors and demonize them as a way of imposing Western notion of state and governance. So that there is deep-rooted, what do you call, epistemological ways of or conducting scholarship, problematic scholarship, that's feeding into this, and some of the problem is coming from that. That's why some people are writing in a very ignorant and negligent way when they write about cultural concepts such as Fano. So we have to address, the individual level. We have to call them out when they're wrong, but also we have to use this talking points that are bigger than Amharas and Ethiopians to push back against demonization of a cultural fabric. So that's something we're engaging with human rights organizations as well. In terms of the message Amharas are sending, that they're not. The situation is not like 1990s where there was no organized Amhara and the rest essentially decided on our fate. I think that has come clear to them. That's why they're paranoid. They know the Amhara movement will shape Ethiopia's future. And the reason is because the status quo is anti-Amhara. What's holding Ethiopia together is a collective phobia against Amharas. What's holding Ethiopia together now is a collective minoritization of Amharas throughout these ethnic homelands that this elites created in 1990s. And our movement is to dismantle that, to imagine a new Ethiopia, or to imagine a new settlement for Ethiopia. And I think the way to do that is, I think we have to elevate the stake for others. We have to basically demand more. I think part of the issue, I think personally, I believe that politicians make in the past few decades is they start with center. They start with what they want the negotiated outcome to be. Now that's not how you do politics. You have to present your wish list and then you negotiate. And as part of that, I think there was a confusion of Amharas will be happy as long as Ethiopia continues. That's no longer the case. We don't want a country that we're prosecuted by the state and non-state countries. There's no value in having a continuity of a state that, as long as Amharas don't have equal rights and are not safe, are not deciding on the affairs of that country. And therefore, we have to elevate the stakes. We have to imagine new ways of, negotiating, and we have to we have to privilege our interest more than anything else. Of course, we're not hostile to any group. We're not advocating for a further fragmentation in the Horn of Africa. But if that is what it takes for Amharas to live peacefully, for Amharas to exist as a people, for me individually to be alive, then that is what we're going to pursue. Nothing when our existence as an individual and as a people is at stake, the rest is not relevant. We have to imagine and execute anything that will ensure we survive as a people, because as we said in 2016, as we've been saying for decades, what is at stake is our survival, and anything that will ensure we are alive will be on the table, and therefore that has to be continuously pushed, and we make sure we're not taken for granted like they did back in 1990s. And I think there is no real possibility of that. And I think that's why the state structure is coming to now, calling names, labeling. When you challenge the state structure and when the state is serving a particular group, criminalizing dissent is a typical response. That's why we're seeing Amharas are being charged for being, given names such as terrorists. Those are indications that we're pressing the buttons that scares them, and they are mobilizing everything and anything they can to push back, and that includes mobilizing the state structure, including the justice system to collectively criminalize our identity. So I believe the message is out there. They are paranoid, but it's not yet done. We have to elevate the risks for them. Ultimately, democratization is not a charity issue. They have to come to realize that democracy is the only way that we can coexist, and they can also peacefully live. And that is like, that we have to elevate, the risks for them to accept that outcome as the only legitimate outcome, and we have to continue to elevate the risks. I think that's so in that way we have to we should not be shy to demand what's rightful, and we should not be shy to come up with creative solutions to our existential challenges. I'll stop there.
Excellent. I think with that, we've addressed the questions from the previous speakers. I see, Gobel, you had your hand raised. Was there any additional comment you wanted to make?
No, I was just gonna say, I know you guys know very well this, but just for the sake of the participant, these people are not democratic, right? They're running around with a Western diplomat and saying Amharans are unionist and they want the one uniform, one country, and etc. Right? For the last 30 years, TPLF leaders are led by only one subsect groups. It's called ADOA. 2/3 of Tigray has never been in power, nor have they benefited from economy. And there is 12 governors in Somali region. 11 of them are from one clan, and there was one, and then who was assassinated. There is, I think, 36 an executive kind of decision maker in OPDO. 29 of them are from one clan. There is no single Harry, a single RC, Bali, anyone in any either in political higher office or they are not even benefiting from the whatever they've got going over there. So when they were out and talking to this diplomat and saying we are for democracy, that's very far from the truth, right? They are neither Democrats or fair for the entire generation, but they are using some phrase to marginalize the Amharans. Their hegemony is clear, but they are creating their clings and to kind of drive off the country to chaos. So I'm always surprised by this data where their rhetoric and what they're saying for outsider and what they're talking about, especially in Al Jazeera interview last time I watched, the guy was saying they're accusing Amharans being a unionist, Unitarians. They want one country. The country is diverse. Obviously, for me, the constitution does not represent 120 million people. It only represents only subsect of clan, small clan of all the Ethiopians. As an Amharans, we no longer accept this. We were not there when they installed this, and then even after, is nobody is benefited from this system except only subsect group of Adoas, of Somalis, of Oromos, of Sidamos. In the Oromos are the worst. We have an issue on APP, but the way that APP function, an Amharan guy, it's really hard for him to live in Kamise, right? That's Amharan region. But that was a little bit of democracy. They decentralized it. They gave people to govern themselves. So when these people talk about Amharans are not being fair or being kind of wants the quote unquote the old system back, this is like 14th century system we have right now. And obviously, I mean, there is more information than this. There is like maybe I will stop here. But these people, some of our friends are here. So these people are an evil. They are not for either democracy or the country. They are there by literally cheating, killing and kind of doing all the evil things to install their hegemony, and that should be stopped. I think Amharans can do that. Amharan's ability to stop this. We have been hesitant to do this before because we put the country before our interest. And we should say no more. If they want to play with their game, we can do that. If they want to come back to the drawing board and then have a discussion, we have many information about them to share. So I just want to add on that. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Gobal. And were there any further comments, Hona or Ted, maybe from Gobal's discussion?
I would just say that I think obviously Ethiopian politics is at the moment is worse than fighting for democracy. I think a number of groups are fearing for their existence. Several of ethnic groups that surround around Oromia region have expressed concern about assimilation and siege. We've seen this recently being stated by even a member of the ruling party in the parliament, right? One of the smaller groups around there. So obviously we are far from, democracy, and the politics the regime is pursuing is a politics of assimilation and genocide. And therefore, I understand, our situation is not as luxurious democratization versus authoritarian. It's where the people's existence is at question, and I understand there's a lot of different steps just we have to pass before we reach the democratization phase. But I do believe that is eventually the goal we want to achieve, regardless of however territorial or nation state dispensation the Horn ended up with. I just want to say that, but I guess we can move to other round.
Excellent. So I think, do we have room for any more questions, guys? I know we're reaching the 2-hour mark. Ted and Hona?
I think maybe one more, and then after that we can wrap it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I see one request at the bottom. I'm going to allow this person. So I think it was Pure. Pure, are you on the stage? Pure, if you're able to speak, please unmute your mic. Pure, are you able to speak?
Yeah, I was going to say, Frobel, if Pure is not ready, if there's another one in line, in the queue, so maybe we can go to the next one.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I see Mike.
Yeah, thank you. ግን ለምንድነው በአማርኛ ማንጠቀመው ነው? አብዛኞቻችን አማርኛ ስለምንሰማ አማርኛ መጠቀሙም ነው ችግሩ። because አብዛኛው እዚህ ውስጥ ያለው እንዳለ አማርኛ ተናጋሪና ለምንድነው እንግሊዝኛ የተጠቀማችሁት? እንትን ለመጠየቅ
well ማይክ ግን ጥያቄን በአማርኛ ማቅረብ ትችላለህ፣ ግን በእንግሊዝኛ የምናወራው አብዛኛው ሰው እንግሊዝኛ ስለሚሰማ ፕላስ ኦዲየንስም ከአማርኛ ውጭ የማይናገሩ ሰዎችም ስላሉ እነሱንም መድረስ ስለምንፈልግ የሆን ተብሎ የተደረገ ጉዳይ ነው ለማለት ነው። ግን ጥያቄው የኛ ማህበረሰብ አባላቶች በአማርኛ ጥያቄን ማቅረብ ትችላለህ
እኮ። ጥያቄ የሚያቀርቡት እኮ በአማርኛ ነውና ለምንድነው በአማርኛ ማውራት ያልተቻለው? because አብዛኛው የአማራ ትግል ከሆነ ደግሞ especially ሁላችንም በአማርኛ ኮሙኒኬት ብናደርግና አብዛኞቻችን አንደርስታንድ እናደርግ አማርኛ ብትጠቀሙ አሪፍ ነው ብዬ ነው ማስበው። because we all are Amhara, ሲና አማርኛ ነው ቋንቋችን። እኛ የናቅነውን ቋንቋ ማንንም አፕሪሺየት ያደርገውምና አማርኛ መጠቀሙ ምንድነው ችግሩ ነው?
ጥያቄ አለህ በአማርኛ ብታቀርበው? ማይክ ጥያቄን አቅርብ በአማርኛ።
ጥያቄው ራሱ ለምን አማርኛ እንጠቀምም ነው ጥያቄ አይደለም ይሄ?
Okay, I see. I get that. ሰምተናል፣ እሱን መልስ እንሰጣለን። ወደ ሌሎች መሄድ እንችላለን።
Okay. Next, I see Sami and Mamush. Sami, if you're able to speak, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Thank you, ሁላችሁንም ትሪፕል ኤ ሆኔ ሁላችሁንም በጣም አመሰግናችኋለሁ. Thank you so much. And my question is, I have one remark, and the other one is a question. My remark is going to be about Fano. I think we all are Fano. I don't. I know we're not, carrying guns or weapons or nothing, but at the same time, we're fighting for Amhara people, Amhara interest. It's not only the culture of the people; it's in our blood, and I believe we all are Fano as long as there is a threat of being ethnically cleansed in Ethiopia, and especially the Amhara people which are facing, we are being in danger from every aspect of life, and we need to be cautious about every single derogatory slurs that comes out from the top, from the government, including disarming Fano, Tanfanyao, Fote, Fotadabash. There is a lot of things that have been done by the government that will expedite their genocidal plan on Amhara people. And we need to refute and, fight for every single one of them. And, I recommend for every Ethiopian who don't believe on this work or who don't understand the magnitude of this works to stop using this slurs, especially when the government publicly call Amharas Tsamfenya, Amharas Fano, or a different kind of terms. They can use that against us to wipe out our people, and that's one of the stages of genocide, which is symbolizing dehumanizing the people they targeting for ethnic cleansing. So that's one point. And the second question I have, there's a lot of things going on in Ethiopia, especially in Amhara region right now. Women's being raped by the government forces, which is Oromo ENDF, and Oromo Special Force. On top of that, the TPLF collaborating with the Oromo ENDF and the government. They are invading Amhara region currently, and we should be doing a lot of documentation, a lot of tweets regarding this subject, because we are in danger currently by the government of Ethiopia. As we speak, they are invading the Amhara regions on top of Gojam, Gondar, Wallo, Shawa, and everywhere they are planning to exterminate the Amhara people. So we need to be acknowledge all this. Atrocities committed by the government forces, including the rape they committed in Amhara region, especially Kobo area. From the information I have, from my family member who told me there's like they go on every single door, every single houses in Kobo area, and they knock and they say, "Oh, you are Fano. Oh, your husband is Fano. Oh, you're a mother of Fano," and they'll be raping Amhara women, including girls. Some of the ages like 14, 12. So they doing a lot of they're committing many atrocities. We should be talking about at the same time, because we need to raise awareness. We need to have the world speaking in and I suggest all Ethiopians who are watching, who are listening all this, and not saying anything. You should be ashamed of yourself. At the same time, all African brothers and sisters who are polarized with the news that comes off from Ethiopia, who are misinformed, who are disinformed. I want you guys to listen, speak up for Amhara people, because everyone is, for me, not only the people committing these atrocities are, must face justice, but also the people that's not speaking up against these atrocities must pay some kind of, solidarity to the Amhara people. And I want everybody to speak up, because where we are what what we are facing right now is beyond our imaginations, and we need to speak up, and thank you all for everything you do, and keep raising awareness, keep doing what you're doing to stop this genocide on Amhara people, and we all need to speak up. And thank you for giving me the chance, AAA and Robel, Honey, everyone. Thank you guys. And Mike, I don't think he's supporter of Amhara. He's supporter of Abiy. I think we shouldn't give him a platform to speak up because he come here to just distract us. So, I just want to say that, add that, and thank you so much for giving me the chance.
Thank you, Sami. Thank you very much for your points, brother. I'm just going to be removing speakers now after they've finished, just to keep it concise, but we'll address your point, Sami. And then lastly, Mamush, if you have any questions, but please try and be brief.
Yeah, and everyone, if you can, please be as brief as possible. And reminder, please, full name, location, and any organizational affiliation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the chance you gave me. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. So my name is Getaun Daraja, and I'm from Washington DC area. I have been supporting AAA for the past over 3 years. Financially, I'm a member, but unfortunately, I have tried to reach you guys on email a couple of times, maybe 2-3 times, and I didn't get a reply back. So I'm here to ask you guys if you just reach all your supporters. You have a huge base, and we appreciate the work you're doing, and we would be happy now to know if there is any way we can add, somehow we can help. So that's all I want to ask. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mamush, for that question. And because it was a very brief question, I'm just going to allow just one more from Haile. Haile, if you're able to speak very quickly, you can ask us one more question and then we'll move into responses. Haile, if you're able to speak, you can unmute your mic and you can ask your question.
Oh, thank you, Robil. Can you guys go to the answers and then I'll ask right after? I apologize. It's just going to be a little loud here. Sorry about that. My daughter.
Okay. So I'm going to go to Ted and Hona. Please, if you guys want to start answering questions, go ahead.
Let me address the last question that was asked about emailing AAA. First, I want to thank you for reaching out to us and emailing us. And we do try to get back to people as quickly as we can. We do get inundated with a lot of emails through directly through email to info@amharaamerica.org. The amount of engagement that we get through our website, our Facebook, our Twitter, and Instagram is immense. We probably get maybe on average 150 engagements a month, and so our PR team tries to respond to people as quickly as possible. But that PR team also helps in terms of with all of our projects that we have ongoing. So we will try to get back to you as quickly as possible. And if you have emailed us or reached out to us, or if you've contacted us through the Facebook Messenger, Twitter, our website, please know we will get back to you. It's just sometimes we just inundated with an immense amount of work. We get the reports from our team in Ethiopia, and it's the team here, the volunteer team, that edits those reports and publishes them. The team here is also engaged on advocacy efforts, and as well as engaging with other Amhara organizations. So we will get that. Thank you for contacting us. In addition to that, if you want to know how you can volunteer, one of the things that we're doing is we have a new project that we have out there. It's called the AAA Advocacy Ambassador. So to be a AAA advocacy ambassador, there's a form out there. You can fill out that form. There is an interview process that you will go through to see if this is something that you would be interested in. So the teams that are leading this effort are actively interviewing candidates right now for the AAA advocacy ambassadors, and these are the people that will help us reach out to policymakers here in the U.S. and also in Canada. We will probably, what we can do is after the space is repost that form so that you can fill out that form and the team can engage you. But we'll try to get back to everyone as quickly as we can. I don't remember what those other questions were, Hone. I think a lot of them were mainly comments. So I don't think there's anything for me to add, and I'll come back at the end, maybe share some of my thoughts based on the comments and questions that people have. The engagement from people.
Yeah, I agree. I think there were a number of them were commented, but it was about our documentation of crimes against Amharas in relation to what's happening in Kopo, but also other areas. And Ted also touched upon on that when he say we have a team in Ethiopia that tries to document. But I think, as you know, regime has imposed internet blackouts throughout the Amhara region. And because of that, we're not getting information as we wish, as much as we wish. We would appreciate, any of you with detailed, verified information about this kind of, arrests or rape or any other cases to send us email. But also we're working on a form that will be posted on the website where you can give us tips and contact information to document those kind of crimes that our team might not have reached on, because we're overstretched, obviously, as Ted said, and Amharas are subjugated to a number of crimes in several parts of Ethiopia. So we don't believe AAA will be able to document every human rights violations and crimes committed against Amharas. And I think that's why we're going to crowdsource tips and then send them back to our team in Ethiopia to verify. So we'll be posting a sort of a Google form where you can report those informations to us, and we will verify and forward those for further investigation. But we are aware of the ongoing crackdown and ongoing arrests and also embezzlement of properties by the Abiy regime in several parts, including Kopo.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Hona. I think just before we go to Haile for the last question, there was a question about how people in the diaspora can help. So I think one way is to provide regular monthly donations to AAA. You can go to AAA's website at www.amharaamerica.org, and you can make those contributions, because those funds are what actually enable the advocacy work, including expanding the advocacy team on the ground in Ethiopia to investigate human rights violations. There were questions about hate speech and documentation of the crimes against Amharas. That's what our team on the ground is doing, and that's a large part of our advocacy. So you might see that we issue semi-regular updates, reports. Now there's a new video format with text as well. And these are also tools that you can use to share with your representatives, policymakers, other stakeholders. This is something that AAA has been doing for a long time now, documenting the crimes in relation to the war, in relation to ethnic violence, in relation to the overall genocide, the political repression, the arrests. So this is a very key area of our advocacy that you can support in that way. And then the question about why the space was not in Amharic. We welcome all questions in Amharic, but I think the key point was that we're doing this because Twitter Space offers a venue for communicating with the international community, with different stakeholders, with journalists, with media personalities, with think tanks, and that's why this medium of advocacy, which is less explored compared to the Amharic platform, is really important, because you can go on YouTube, you can go to different medias, and you can find this information on current events explored and analyzed very in depth. but the English aspect is something that's less explored. But that does not mean that you can't ask questions in Amharic or engage with us in that way. And we also do our best to issue updates in Amharic to inform our community. So that's something that we're also working on. And with that, I think we can go to Haile's question. Haile, please unmute your mic and you can ask your question.
Thank you, Robel. Thank you, Hone, Teddy. I'm Haile. I'm here in the DC area, ASN, Amhara Society Network, and also here working with our team, AWD, and everything, and others as well. I know Teddy wanted us to, introduce ourselves. So I really want, first and foremost, I really want to thank you guys for all the hard work that you guys are doing. And it's very important that we continue to support AAA and in every way. And this is something that's we have consistent, and you have been a organization that has been consistent, and that's refreshing. Even though you might have difficulties, you continue to push forward with that. So I really want to appreciate you guys for everything that you do, and everyone that's working behind the scenes as well. So with that being said, I wanted to know one thing is how can we help uh, uh, with all the work that is being done? What are the different organizations or just individuals? How can we help with AAA fill some of the gaps? That's one thing that I want to ask. And another thing that I'm concerned about is the town hall meeting. Is there a Zoom? Is there a Zoom link that you guys have for uh, uh, for the fellow Ethiopian Americans or the Amaras, all the Amaras that are not going to be able to make it there in California? Is there a Zoom link that we can participate to show that it's we have a multitude of individuals that are very concerned about the situation? And then one of the things that I've been hearing a lot in space and other places as well within the community is what is it that we expect to get from Mike Hammer? What is it that we're going to be able to present to him? What are we going to be asking him to do for us? And also, how can we change that from asking and demanding? How can we start making sure that we're in the front runner, I guess, in the driver's seat going forward? Because sometimes it shows when we have strength that things will change, and so it is election time comes around quicker than we think, and so those are some of the questions that has been presented to us, and you know we actually I don't know how to answer that, so those are some questions that came up yesterday actually. And what is AAA's thoughts on that? And so maybe if you haven't already covered it, I know I came in a little late, so if you covered it earlier on, I apologize. Just wanted to ask that. And one last thing, with that, I just want to let you guys know, Robel. I know you were very interested last time we spoke in person, and Teddy as well, about 1888 radio, which is the shortwave radio that will be broadcasting in Ethiopia and in the Amhara region and everywhere else. That will be coming out very soon, coming out sometime next week. And so I want to let everybody know, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. This is something that is exciting for us because we want to make sure that we have voices there. And so that way, just like Hone was saying, if when we have reports and things like that, we can report it out live and let everyone know what is actually happening, and also give you guys some infos as well, so that way you can document it and continue with that. And thank you, Dr. Sunnight, for promoting that for us as well. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you guys. Thank you for all the hard work, and yeah, man, just keep pushing. We're behind you 100%. Yeah, Amaras have to stick together and push, and we'll win. Thank you.
Thank you, Haile, for those critical questions. We appreciate everything that you do. So now we're going to go into responses, and this is going to be the final question. So there's not going to be anything more. First, maybe we can go to Ted to address the questions about the town hall meeting with the special envoy to the Horn of Africa. And then Hona, maybe you can like follow up after that on the other question.
Sure. Haile, we addressed this a little bit earlier, but I'll respond now, and then obviously you can reach out to us as well. In terms of like the issues that we will be addressing with Ambassador Hammer, well, all the issues that's covered here, all the issues that concern Amharas, will be front and center with Ambassador Hammer. This is not the first time that we will address these issues with Ambassador Hammer or other senior State Department officials, our senators, our members of Congress. This is something that we do on a regular basis. We don't beg. It's not like it's not an ask as as American U.S. Civic organizations. We can make demands, and that's what we will do. And we will educate. We will put our issues in the same way that we're putting them here. And so they're not unfamiliar with our issues. They're very familiar with our issues because this is not the first time that we're going to be having this conversation with Ambassador Hammer and other state officials. This is something that we, when there's an issue that concerns us, we will let them know immediately. We'll communicate with them via either email or even, picking up a phone and calling them directly. But it takes a long time, to achieve your goals diplomatically. But diplomacy requires consistent engagement, and you have to be committed to it. And a lot of ways also even personalizing it, right? And so to the point to where trust is there, trust is gained, mutual trust and mutual interest as well. So, with regards to streaming it live, I think the goal is to stream it live. This is something that I'll bring up with Betty, who's the chairperson of the Amhara Association of Los Angeles, and also with Ambassador Hammer's special assistant. I don't think this is going to be an issue because this is a public meeting. We're inviting the public to participate in this, the public in the LA area to participate in this conversation. So that should not be an issue to stream it live. But we'll make an announcement, once the LA's agrees to it, and they also have the audio equipment, to stream it live. That should not be an issue. Were there anything else? Were there any questions or comments that we need to address? If not, I'll just share my thoughts maybe at the end. Robel.
Yeah, I think there was a question of like how can we help AAA. I think on that.
Go ahead, Hone. I'll come after you. Something I would like to cover on that. Actually, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll be brief on that. Then I think I mentioned earlier. We have people that do investigations in Ethiopia. We have also lobbying firm in DC and all that. That requires funding as well. But an idea is like if you are from a certain area and you want AAA to document, atrocities committed against Amharas there, you can link up, someone that on the ground that's professional, can write English well, is ideally human rights lawyer or anything like that, and they can work with us to document these atrocities, and you can financially help them to cover the expenses they incur. Those kind of arrangements could be a way to centralize, documentation efforts, and then obviously we can, synchronize that effort with other initiatives such as the radio program that's the radio channel that's being set up, right? So that's one concrete way. Always, all this done in a voluntary part-time basis, and I think, as Ted has said earlier, if we want to have impact quickly and at a scale we want more people to be involved at a longer period, and so finding that way. And obviously, if you are a professional yourself and can help in editing and writing these reports, as Ted said, that link will also be reshared today, and you can volunteer with AAA as well. But the phone campaigners and others, I think perhaps State can go on those in a very detailed. One quick comment about, I think Mike Hammer's meeting. Obviously, what we do on a regular basis is, to try to influence the U.S. policy and how the policy so far has not been really productive, both from the U.S.'s interest and also from Ethiopian people's interest, and therefore, the it's not really like asking. It's more of like educating what is the gap and what is the problem, and then showing the consequences of these misguided policies, both from Ethiopian people's perspective and the US's interest and values. So that is, I think, the kind of engagement we follow, which means like you have to be, we have to stay away from further antagonizing, name calling, and all that. We should be firm in our demands. We should be firm in telling the truth in terms of the U.S. policy's impact. But as the way you do that is like always frame it in a way that makes them to listen to you and question what they are doing, rather than turning them off. I think that's some of the issues we see in our social media engagement. And like we don't want them to be turned off completely from the messaging. We want them to understand the scale of the gravity of the issue, but at the same time also is an educative function that we tell them what's exactly wrong and why it is wrong and what's the consequence. That is the tone we kind of use in our engagement, not just with the State Department, but with other relevant stakeholders. I'll stop there.
Yeah, just jumping in here real quick. A few years ago, the AAA leadership decided to make a concerted investment in Ethiopia to have hired consultants, professional hired consultants. The majority of these individuals are lawyers to investigate, document, and report on human rights atrocities. And this is a significant investment from from AAA, and then we have a team of volunteers here that edit these reports before they are published. And the reason that we decided to do that is because in order for us as an organization and really as a people to advocate properly, we need to have facts. We need to have the information. It cannot simply be through hearsay, or you cannot do it without documentation. Proper documentation, adhering to in human rights investigative standards must be utilized. And so that's why we did that. And so the foundation of all of our advocacy is the reporting that we get from Ethiopia. And this is a huge investment for us. But because of that, for those of you that follow us, know that AAA reporting is readily referenced by major international media outlets, whether they are the Washington Post, Reuters, the Associated Press, New York Times, Al Jazeera. So, News African Magazine. And so, what this is a way for us to educate the broader international community about what's happening to Amharas in Ethiopia. Our reports is also used by other Amhara organizations across the globe to do advocacy work. They share these reports regularly with their members of parliament, members of Congress. Our report is also used by the United Nations. It's because of our reporting that the ICHREE, reached out to us, and we began that conversation and that discussion about what is happening to Amharas, in Ethiopia. Whether they be the crimes against humanity that was committed by the TPLF, the Oromia Regional Special Forces, or the Oromo Liberation Army. We provided our reporting contacts. So these reports are critical to how we do advocacy. So one way, and then the other thing that we did a few years ago, about 3 years ago, was to hire a lobbying firm, because we could not continue to do this, just simply as volunteers. We needed to scale up our lobbying, so we invested in hiring a lobbying firm last year. AAA spent $80,000 on lobbying the year before, $80,000. This is a lot of money for for AAA, and of course this would not be possible without our donors and supporters. So one way you can do that is to financially support AAA, because it does cost a lot of money to manage AAA. But because of this, partnering with the Center for Human Rights, and a human rights organization associated with the University of Pretoria, we filed a legal complaint with the African Union, against the Abiy regime. And so this is really a huge step for us as an organization and also as a movement, because we have now brought the issue of Amhara genocide before an international body. And this is, and these are the steps that we need to take as a people in order for the Amhara genocide to be acknowledged, recognized, and that so that finally we can have, justice and accountability. So, your financial support to AAA, to organizations like FANA, the Federation of Amharas in North America, to the new umbrella organization and International Amhara Movement that has been established, bringing together 47 Amhara organizations across the globe, is really vital. Or any other Amhara organization that is out there. So that's one of the ways that you can help, but also participating in the campaigns, that are out there. So AAA has a campaign out there right now where you can contact your member of parliament, member of Congress. So when you pick up a phone, that is very personal. When you have the staffer of a member parliament or Congress hear your concerns, when they are hearing the concerns of constituents. Look, the social media campaigning, it's great, it is needed. But when you personalize your issues, it has a much more deeper impact. So, when the Tole massacre happened, one of our supporters had 12 family members killed. We arranged a meeting with his senator, Senator Kane, and also his member of Congress. This man and his son, crying in tears, were able to share the pain of their family to their elected officials. So when you go to the town halls, of your the candidates that are running for office, and you shake their hand and you tell them who you are and the issues that matter to you, that is personalizing it, and that is very, very powerful. So personalize your issues, personalize your stories by calling, meeting, and talking. So this is one of the ways that you can help. There are many other campaigns. There are fundraisings that are happening that you can participate. There are protests that are happening that you can participate. Join Amara organizations, and if there is an Amara, if there is something out there that you feel is not being done by Amaras, if you have identified a gap, close that gap, right? If you have identified it, resolve that gap by bringing people together, people that people within your circles, and in your circle, and organizing and closing that gap for the Amhara movement. Um, the difference between Amaras now and in the past is that the Amhara movement is a bold movement. We are demanding a change to the way Ethiopia is being governed. We are demanding that Amaras also can be in power. We are demanding that Amaras be in power. The Amaras are seeing what it means that when they speak up for themselves, that they can have a huge change, an impactful change, when they come together and organize themselves. If you look at really the political rhetoric, whether it's in Amara-centric medias or not Amara-centric medias, it's all about Amaras. That is the effect that we are having by organizing it as Amaras. Because there was a question earlier, like, are they listening? Yes, they are listening, because finally we are organized and we are speaking out for ourselves. We are making demands, and we are finally saying that the survival of Amaras, the survival of us, is the most important thing. Us surviving and thriving, our personhood, our culture, our identity, our history is the most important thing to us. That is the foundation of all of the conversation of Ethiopia. And so, if Amaras are not going to survive other people, then this country it's not going to, it's really, to be honest with you, this country is not going to survive, and you're seeing it. When the TPLF lost power in 2018, the country was not in this situation that we're seeing it right now. When it was the Amharas in 2016 were just protesting. In 2017, they were just protesting. We didn't have this many Amhara organizations. Amharas have now gone way beyond that. You are seeing an insurgency right now in Ethiopia. You are seeing Amhara organizations across the globe flourishing, doing diplomacy, advocacy, being readily interviewed on international media, raising millions of dollars. So this is a huge change in terms of where we are as a people, and where and where this country is headed. And in the next phase of Ethiopia, Amharas will have a say. They will have an impact, and our issues will be front and center. They are not going to be ignored like they have been for nearly since Mengistu came to power. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Excellent. And with that, HoA, did you have any final remarks before we close?
No, thank you, everyone. And yeah, let's continue the engagement. I don't have anything else to say. You can close up.
Excellent. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, HoA. Thank you to all those who asked questions. We're going to be concluding the space now. Just keep in mind that to continue receiving updates from AAA, make sure to follow AAA's account, follow all those on stage. And you can also find us on Twitter, on Telegram, recently on TikTok, on YouTube. And so these are all platforms that you can follow to stay up to date. For donations, you can see the pinned link, or you can just visit our website to donate. If you have any questions, you can email us at info@amharaamerica.org, or you can send us direct messages. And with that, we're going to close the space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.